Hi Eli, hi Vinny. It's time for chapter 2 of The Wind in the Willows, The Open Road. Here we go. Ratty, said the mole suddenly, one bright summer morning, if you please, I want to ask you a favor. The rat was sitting on the riverbank singing a little song. He had composed to himself, so he was very taken up with it and would not pay proper attention to Mole or anything else. Since early morning, he had been swimming in the river in company with his friends, the ducks. And when the ducks stood on their heads suddenly, as ducks will, he would dive down and tickle their necks just under where their chins were, be if ducks had chins, till they were forced to come up to the surface in a hurry, sputtering and angry, and shaking their feathers at him, for it's impossible to say quite all you feel when your head is under water. At last they implored him to go away, attend to his own affairs, and leave them to mind theirs. So the rat went away and sat on the riverbank in the sun, and made up a song about them, which he called Duck's Ditty. All along the backwater, through the rushes tall, ducks are a-dabbling, up tails all. Duck tails, drake's tails, yellow feet a-quiver, yellow bills all out of sight, busy in the river. Slushy green undergrowth where the roach swim. Here we keep our larder, cool, full, and dim. Everyone for what he likes, we like to be. Heads down, tails up, dabbling free. High in the blue above, swift swirl and call. We are down a-dabbling, up tails and all. I don't know what I think so very much of this little song rat, observed the mole cautiously. He was no poet himself and didn't care who knew it, and he had a candid nature. Nor don't the ducks neither, replied the rat cheerfully. They say, why can't fellows be allowed to do that, what they like when they like, as they like, instead of other fellows sitting on banks and watching them all the time, and making remarks and poetry and things about them? What nonsense it all is. That's what the ducks say. So it is, said the mole with great heartiness. No, it isn't, cried the rat indignantly. Well, then, it isn't, is it? Replied the mole soothingly. But what I wanted to ask you, won't you take me to call on Mr. Toad? I've heard so much about him, and I do so want to make his acquaintance. Why, certainly, said the good-natured rat, jumping to his feet and dismissing poetry from his mind for the day. Get the boat out and we'll paddle out there at once. It's never the wrong time to call on Toad. Early or late, he's always the same fellow, always good-tempered, always glad to see you, always sorry when you go. He must be a very nice animal, observed the mole as he got into the boat and took the sculls, which the rat settled himself comfortably into the stern. He is indeed the best of animals, replied Rat, so simple, so good-natured, and so affectionate. Perhaps he's not very clever. We can't all be geniuses, and it may be that he is both boastful and conceited, but he has got some great qualities, has Toady. Rounding the bend in the river, they came in sight of a handsome, dignified old house of mellowed red brick with well-kept lawns reaching down to the water's edge. There's Toad's Hall, said the rat, and that creek on the left, where the notice board says private, no landing allowed, leads to his boathouse, where we'll leave the boat. The stables are over there to the right. That's the banqueting hall you're looking at now. Very old, that is. Toad is rather rich, you know, and this is really one of the nicest houses in these parts, though we never admit so much to Toad. They glided up the creek, and Mole shipped his sculls as they passed into the shadow of the large boathouse. Here they saw many handsome boats, slung from the crossbeams or hauled up on a slip, but none in the water, and the place had an unused and deserted air. The rat looked around. I understand, he said. Boating is played out. He's tired of it, done with it. I wonder what new fad he's taken up now. Come along, and let's look him up. We shall hear all about it quite soon enough. They disembarked, strolled across the gay flower decks in search of Toad, when whom they presently happened upon resting in a wicker garden chair with a preoccupied expression on face and a large map spread out on his knees. "Hooray!" he cried, jumping up to seeing them. "This is splendid!" He shook the paws of both of them warmly, never waiting for an introduction to the mole. "How kind of you," he went on, dancing around them. "I was just going to send a boat down the river for you, Ratty, with strict orders that you were to be fetched up here at once, whatever you are doing. I want you badly, both of you. Now what will you take? Come inside and have something. You don't know how lucky it is you're timing just now." "Let's sit quiet a bit, Toady," said the rat, throwing himself into the easy chair, while the mole took another by his side and made some civil remarks about Toad's delightful residence. "Finest house on the whole river," cried Toad boisterously, "or anything else for that matter," he could not help adding. Here the rat nudged the mole. Unfortunately, the Toad saw him do it and turned very red. There was a moment's painful silence. Then Toad burst out laughing. "All right, Ratty," he said. "It's only my way, you know. And it's not a very bad house, is it? You know you rather like it yourself. Now look here. Let's be sensible. You are the very animals I wanted. You've got to help me. It's the most important." "It's about your rowing, I suppose," said Rat, with an innocent air. "You're getting on fairly well, though. You splash a good bit still. With a great deal of patience and any quality of coaching, you may—" "Oh, pooh, boating!" interrupted the Toad in a great disgust. "Silly boyish amusement. I've given up that long ago. Sheer waste of time, that's what it is. It makes me downright sorry to see you fellows, who ought to know better, spending all your energies in the aimless manner. No, I've discovered the real thing, the only genuine occupation for a lifetime. I propose to devote the remainder of mine to it, and can only regret the wasted years that lie behind me, squandered in trivialities. Come with me, dear Ratty, and you amiable friend also, if you will be so good, just as far as the stable yard, and you shall see. You shall see." He led the way to the stable yard accordingly, the rat following with the most mistrustful expression, and there, drawn out in the coach house into the open, they saw a gypsy caravan shining with newness, painted a canary yellow, picked out with green and red wheels. "There you are," cried Toad, straddling and expanding himself. "There's real life for you, embodied in the little cart. The open road, the dusty highway, the heath, the common, the hedgerows, the rolling downs, camps, villages, towns, cities, here today, up and off to somewhere else tomorrow. Travel, change, interest, excitement, the whole world before you, and a horizon that's always changing. And mind, this is the very finest cart of its sort that has ever been built, without any exception. Come inside and look at the arrangement. Planned 'em all myself, I did." The mole was tremendously interested and excited, followed him eagerly up the steps into the interior of the caravan. The rat only snorted and thrusted his hands deep into his pockets, remaining where he was. It was indeed very compact and comfortable. Little sleeping bunks, a little table that folded up against the wall, a cooking stove, lockers, bookshelves, a bird cage with a bird in it, and pots, pans, jugs, kettles of every size and variety. "All complete," said Toad triumphantly, pulling open his locker. "You see, biscuits, potted lobster, sardines, everything you could possibly want. Soda water here, bakey there, little brown paper bacon, jam, cards, dominoes. You'll find," he continued as they descended the steps again, "you'll find that nothing whatsoever has been forgotten when we make our start this afternoon." "I beg your pardon," said the rat slowly, as he chewed a straw, "but I overhear you say something about we and start and this afternoon." "Now, you dear old Ratty," said Toad imploringly, "don't begin talking in that stiff and stuffy sort of way, because you know you got to come. I can't possibly manage without you, so please consider it settled, and don't argue. It's the one thing I can't stand. You surely don't mean to stick it to your dull, frosty old river all your life and just live in a hole in the bank in a boat. I want to show you the world. I'm going to make an animal of you, my boy." "I don't care," said Ratty doggedly. "I'm not coming, and that's flat. And I'm going to stick to my old river and live in a hole and a boat, as I've always done. And what's more, Mole's going to stick to me and do as I do. Aren't you, Mole?" "Of course I am," said Mole loyally. "I'll always stick to you, Rat. And what you say is to be, has to got to be. All the same, it sounds as if you might have been, well, rather fun. You know," he added wistfully. Poor Mole. The life adventures was so new a thing to him and so thrilling, and this fresh aspect of it was so tempting, and he has fallen in love at first sight with a canary-colored cart and all of its little figments. The Rat saw what was passing in his mind and wavered. He hated disappointing people, and he was fond of the Mole, and he would do almost anything to oblige him. Toad was watching both of them closely. "Come along in and have some lunch," he said diplomatically, "and we'll talk it over. We needed to decide anything in a hurry. Of course, I don't really care. I only want to give you pleasure to you fellows. Live for others. That's my motto in life." During luncheon, which was excellent, of course, as everything at Toad Hall always was, the Toad simply let himself go. Disregarding the Rat, he proceeded to play upon the inexperienced Mole on his harp. Naturally, a voluble animal, and always mastered by his imagination, he painted the prospects of the trip and the joys of the open life and the roadside in such glowing colors that the Mole could hardly sit in his chair for excitement. Somehow it seemed taken for granted by all three of them that the trip was settled, and the Rat, though still unconceived in his mind, allowed his good nature to override his personal objections. He could not bear to disappoint his two friends, who were already deep in schemes and anticipations, planning out each day's separate occupation for several weeks ahead. When they were quite ready, and now triumphant, Toad led his companions to the paddock and set them to capture the old gray horse, who, without having been consulted and in his own extreme annoyance, had been told off by Toad for the duteous job in this dusty expedition. He frankly preferred the paddock and took a deal of catching. Meanwhile, Toad packed the lockers still tighter with necessities, hung nosebag nets of onions, bundles of hay, baskets from the bottom of the cart. At last the horse was caught and harnessed, and they set off, all talking at once, each animal either trudging by the side of the cart or sitting on the shaft. As the humor took him, it was a golden afternoon. The smell of the dust they kicked up was rich and satisfying. Out of the orchards on either side of the road, birds called and whistled to them cheerfully. Good-natured wayfarers passing them gave them "good day," or stopped to say things about their beautiful cart, and the rabbits sitting on their front doors of their hedgerows held up their forepaws and said, "Oh my, oh my." I think that's a good place to end, and we'll do more later on. We'll finish up. Love you, sweetheart. Mwah!